So you're looking to play Hawkeye in Marvel Rivals. Well, luckily enough for you, you've come to the right place, as I'll be giving you the ultimate guide to Hawkeye. And quickly, before the video starts, I want to ask if you're new here or find yourself coming back on the regular and you aren't already subscribed, why not? It's completely free and you're coming back anyways. With that out of the way, let's get started. Now, Hawkeye's first and primary ability is his bow. It's pretty self-explanatory, but there's two different fire modes for the bow. The first one being a charge shot, and then the secondary alternative fire mode is an explosive triple shot. Now, something that's interesting about Hawkeye's charge shot is that you have to be looking at an enemy to actually charge it up. So if you're not looking at an enemy, you can't preemptively charge it up, but the enemy actually has to be on your crosshairs to charge it up. As you can see, I'm not looking at an enemy and it's not charging up. However, the second I start to hover over an opponent, the bar starts to fill. And just like most other games that have some type of bow mechanic, the higher the charge, well, the more damage you're going to be doing. Now, his secondary alternative fire is the explosive shot that shoots 3 arrows. That's decently spread, and as you spam it, it just goes away. Now, what I've found is that you should just use the charge shot. More damage, even though it's single target, this is a lot better with dealing with enemies, because even if it's not entirely charged, it still does quite a lot of damage, as you can see. Now, his E, or his special ability, whatever you want to call it, is the supersonic arrow. When you shoot it, you hit the target, inflicting them with a slowing debuff, and if they're in the arrow, they'll get knocked down. This is very situational and extremely useful in most scenarios. Now, I will say, when it comes to using the supersonic arrow, it's very useful to pair it with your explosive shot. So you hit a supersonic arrow shot and they're slowed, so you can easily get a whole bunch of damage, especially if they're all grouped up together and slowed in that AoE. Hawkeye's shift ability is titled Crescent Slash. It's very useful in a lot of different situations, especially if enemies are trying to jump onto you. You can use it to knock opponents away. As you can see, they get launched. And it's just very good to have. It's like a get out of jail free card, essentially. Something I find very interesting with Hawkeye that a lot of people are going to miss is that you can actually deflect bullets with his default melee button. In this case, the default melee button is V. As you can see, it deflects, so you don't take damage. It's a little hit or miss sometimes, but I mean, it's useful in a lot of scenarios. It's a very niche or something you don't have to pay attention to a lot, but it can be very useful. Hawkeye's ultimate ability is titled Hunter's Sight, and essentially what it is, the more people in your vision, the more damage you're going to do. You see the after images. As you can see, it's also an instant charge to the charged arrow, allowing you to do a ton of damage. Now, that's an overview of all the abilities of Hawkeye. How do you actually play them? So when it comes to Hawkeye, what type of playstyle are you looking for? Well, it sounds actually pretty self-explanatory. Hawkeye excels in long-range combat. Think of him like the sniper of your team. On par with Black Widow, you're going to be wanting to probably sit mid to long range to really try to get full use of his charge shot. And I would even go as far as to say you could play Hawkeye pretty aggressively as well. As I mentioned earlier, his default base melee allows him to block projectiles, making him have the ability to survive pretty up close to enemies. So if you wanted to play him more aggressively up close, you can definitely do it, but it will definitely be more difficult. Most of the time, you're just sitting there dealing damage to whoever you can, with of course always prioritizing the healers, the DPS, then the tanks, because when it comes to the healers and DPS, because of their low HP compared to tanks, it only takes one fully charged charge shot to the head, followed up by a quick body shot to easily get rid of them. Now, in my eyes, there's no perfect way to play this character, as there's a ton of different playstyles that fit him, and because the character is rather straightforward, I feel like a lot of new players can pick him up quite easily. Now, I think it'd be also fair to talk about the cons or the disadvantages to playing Hawkeye. Now, one of Hawkeye's biggest disadvantages is his movement. Although he does get a double jump that can be extremely useful in a lot of scenarios to get away, it does have a cooldown, so you can't spam it. This means if you use your double jump too early and an enemy player ends up jumping on you, you're more than likely going to end up at the respawn screen. And not only that, from the time I've been playing him, he has pretty slow movement speed, especially when you're trying to use a charge shot. So your primary damage, your charge shot, is also a disadvantage in a way. As you're charging up a shot, you're slowly moving across the enemy player's screen, allowing them to get some pretty easy damage into you. So you kind of have to figure out pathing and when and where to use cover when playing Hawkeye. And because a lot of the buildings you take cover behind can be easily destroyed, it could get rather frustrating frustrating when you're playing Hawkeye. But don't get me wrong, with all these flaws that the character has, he still does an insane amount of damage. You're essentially on a full 100% charge, 1-2 tapping both healers and DPS. But again, even though there is the explosive shot secondary, you're primarily just going to be focusing on the charge shot, as again, that's going to be all of your damage. I only recommend using the explosive shot if enemies are super clumped together, and if you think it's worth using the explosive shot in that scenario. As even though I might find myself in a very good scenario to use the explosive shots, I still find myself using the charge shot as well. It does more damage. Now that you understand Hawkeye just a bit better, let's look at some gameplay.